Home Affairs Minister Dr Aaron Motsoaledi will today launch the Border Management Authority program at the Beit-Bridge border post between South Africa and Zimbabwe. Motsoaledi will unveil the first group of border guards during a ceremony near Musina in Limpopo. The guards underwent physical and fitness assessments before their deployment. So the department says the guards will be strategically deployed along some segments of the border. The Border Management Authority Act of 2020 initiative aims to facilitate legal cross-border movement and curb criminality around the border. For more on this, we are joined by Dr Nakampe Masiapato, who is the Border Management Authority Commissioner at the Home Affairs Department. Great to have you. Thanks very much for being with us, Dr Masiapato.
No, thank you very much, Leanne, and good morning to Morning Live listeners.
So I think the good starting point would be at this juncture is to talk about and take us through the overall mandate of the Border Management Authority.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Firstly, the Border Management Authority, as you have indicated, Leanne, it is fairly established to do two main functions, and those functions are located in the Border Management Authority Act in Section 5. One, it is to facilitate the legitimate movement of persons in and out of South Africa. Secondly, is to facilitate the legitimate movement or trade as well as services in and out of South Africa. But thirdly, it is also to ensure effective coordination and cooperation as we do this border management work together with the border communities and all the relevant stakeholders.
Yeah. So, and this is a very challenging job because, this has come under a lot of scrutiny and people very concerned at the fact that South Africa's borders are very, very porous. And particularly when we talk about this border between Zimbabwe and South Africa. So let's talk about what is happening today. What exactly does the launch entail?
Yeah, maybe let me start by saying, Leanne, so that the context is clear. The Border Management Authority, it is expected to be a standalone public entity, which is what we call a Schedule 3A public entity, and it is going to be fully a standalone on the 1st of April next year in 2023. So for us to be able to establish this Border Management Authority, there are two things we are currently doing whilst under incubation by the Department of Home Affairs, which is in the current financial year. What we are doing is two things. One, we are trying to integrate all of the various departments that are functional at the ports of entry. The people will be moving out of their departments and they will be integrated into the Border Management Authority so that in the front line, there will be one authority with a single command and control. That is the integration work. We are doing that in the current financial year, and everybody should be integrated before we enter the new financial year, 1st of April next year. But on the other side, we are doing the capacitation of the authority. So in the capacitation side, it is where we then recruited these 200 first cohorts of the border guards. So your question, what is basically to happen today? So today, the Minister of Home Affairs as the chair of the Interministerial Consultative Committee on Border Management, together with other ministers, they are going to be unveiling these 200 cohorts of the border guards here in Musina, and after that they shall be deployed in the various segments of the border environment.
So, I mean, when we look at the borders and obviously these guards that we are going to see today are going to be deployed. Obviously the border post is exceptionally long. I mean, we're talking about 200 kilometers of border where they are going to be deployed at certain areas. So let's talk about the deployment and the exact role that they're going to be playing in this.
No, thank you very much on that. Maybe let me start by indicating this point. You will be aware that the overall responsibility in terms of borderline patrols and the functions themselves lies with the South African National Defence Force. And by the way, our land borders is 4,773 kilometers all in total. And that the SNDF is fairly responsible for the entire. We are then coming through as the Border Management Authority, coming to deploy statically, meaning we have to station the border guards in the problematic segments of the borderline. We are doing that in order to make sure that we enforce what we call border laws. So we will basically be doing what is called border law enforcement. And the segments that we are going to be deploying in the current is basically 6 segments. The first segment is this segment between us and Zimbabwe, which is very much problematic in terms of illegal migration, as you indicated earlier, together with issues around cigarette smugglings and all that. The second segment we'll be deploying is the segment with Mozambique. There we are going to be dealing with issues of wildlife. The third one is Lubombo with Mozambique, and there we're also going to be dealing with issues around illegal migration and all of that. And then the fourth one is going to be at Kosi Bay, Northern KwaZulu-Natal, where you will know we are dealing with issues there about the smuggling of stolen vehicles and all of that. And then from there, we'll then be going to Oshoek with Swaziland. Again, wildlife is a challenge there in terms of stock theft. The sixth one is going to be Maseru and Fixback down in the Free State to Lesotho. There again, we're going to be dealing with issues of stock theft as well as illegal migration. These are the 6 segments where we're going to be deploying this cohort. We do know that if people look at the numbers and look at the problem, the number is indeed minute, but we do accept that this is the start. We are going to statically deploy in those problematic areas, and ultimately, as we get more capacity, we should be able to cover some of those problematic areas.
Obviously, cash is king right now, because this is an expensive exercise that you're going to be embarking on here. And we know that there's a big responsibility that's been laid on the hands of the Border Management Authority, because this is, I mean, you are now the man that, finally we can actually turn to for answers when it comes to this, because it's just been such a difficult path to navigate when we talk about border control. But now that there is a commissioner, that you're the man in the job, this is what we're going to talk to. In terms of money spent on all of this, talk us through this and the budgets that you're working with right now.
Yeah, so what I can start by indicating, Leon, on that, as I've indicated, there are 2 things that we are actually dealing with. The first one is the integration. Integration, what it means is we are going to be moving the functions in terms of border law enforcement from the 5 departments. In this instance, we talk about Home Affairs in terms of immigration function. We talk about agriculture in terms of the issues of plants and the like. We talk about forestry, fisheries, and the environment. And then we talk about the National Department of Health in terms of port health. And we are talking about the access control function that is done by members of the SAPS as we speak. So these 5 areas, they are then going, we are basically finalizing the process to move all these functions through a presidential proclamation from these departments into the BMA. Once the president proclaims the functions would have moved, then we're going to move all the staff that is currently on the environment. They'll be exiting their departments and be members of the Border Management Authority. In that context, they come with their budget, both the compensation of employees together with the operational cost. Once they have moved, so it means that money is already available and there's not going to be any additional money as it were. Now, in terms of the capacitation side, and that is where now the bringing in of the current 200 border guards. There we only have the 200, and the kind of money that we got from National Treasury to do this capacitation is around 76 million, which is the current amount that we have for this capacitation. But when we then move into the integrated Border Management Authority by the 1st of April, all the money that we have moved from the departments, together with the current money, all of that will be put together, and we should be able to now start dealing with the further capacitation of Border Management Authority going forward. And that is where the discussions with National Treasury about new money and all of that will come into the fray.
Yeah, I know you touched on it briefly about the SANDF and the control of the SANDF, but obviously these 200 border officials that will be coming through now, how are they going to work alongside the SAPS and the SANDF? I mean, will there be no conflict in all of this?
Yeah, maybe let me also clarify that, Leon, because it is very much critical. Firstly, you will be aware that if we talk about the port of entry itself, we do have SAPS. Currently, there is this work they do, it's called access control, in terms of access into the border environment or into the port of entry. That is the function that is going to be done by the border guards, who will then be working for the Border Management Authority. However, the responsibilities around investigating crime and things like that, even inside the port of entry itself, it doesn't mean that the border guards are taking over that function from SAPS. Practically, as an example, if somebody somebody is to be shot inside a port of entry, it is a crime scene, the police gets called, or SAPS comes in and take over the crime scene. That is what SAPS will be doing in terms of this. But in terms of border access control, that function will be done by the border guards. Similarly, if the border guards intercepts a stolen vehicle because somebody was hijacked somewhere in Joburg or anything like that, the investigation of that crime will then be handed over to the detectives, and the detectives will go do their work inside the country. There's not going to be any contradiction or any confusion. It's straightforward. In terms of the issues around the borderline, the SNDF's mandate is very clear, constitutionally and otherwise. It is provided for in the Constitution that they do an overall border control as well as border protection. Their responsibility is to make sure that the country is protected from any possible, invasion of the country, as it were. That's the responsibility. But the issue around civilians who then subvert immigration laws and then enter the country illegally, that is the activity that the border guards will be responsible for. Now, what it means is the border guards will be statically deployed. Static means they will be stationed directly into areas that are problematic to make sure that those illegal activities don't take. Between BMA or Border Management Authority and SNDF is provided for in law, and we've already finalized what we call the implementation protocol. It defines practically what is it that the border guards will do and what is it that the SNDF will do. This training we talk about, SAPS was there, as well as SNDF training the border guards, and all that segmentation has been done. No contradiction and no confusion.
What about the AfriForum? Now, I know AfriForum Civil Rights Group came forward and they said that they wanted to get involved as well with their border patrol. That they were saying that after their documentary Open Borders, talking to how, the dismal condition that our borders are in, which is no secret. It is a big problem. And of course, the repercussions of having such porous borders, what it does into the country. And we talk about xenophobia, we talk about all issues, stolen goods, all of these kind of things, and people being coming into the country and being taken out of the country illegally as well. So there are a lot of issues. So let's talk of AfriForum. Are they there? The patrol that they've been talking about, how will they work alongside you? Is there a partnership? What's going on there?
Yeah, Leanne, we have already spoken a bit on this.
No, such an important part we need to get to here. I am hoping that we get this conversation going up, because the two questions I really want to get through to Dr. Masiapato is the whole issue of AfriForum, and as you heard, he was about to tell us that they have had a conversation. But I think perhaps one of the biggest topics that we need to talk about is the issue of corrupt officials, because when we posed this question on our Twitter platform, the one thing that people were saying is that yes, well and good, it's all great, you can launch these things, but it's the corruption amongst the Home Affairs officials that is the biggest problem. And how are we going to get to the bottom of that? So that is a very, very important topic that we need to hopefully cover if we do get the Authority Commissioner back with us. But it still looks like that signal is gone. I was surprised it was hanging on for so long. He had awful connection with him, but he seems to have left the meeting at this point. But a very important launch that's taking place today, and I think many people hoping that this is going to make a difference when it comes to that border management program that is finally going to be taking place, and all these guards are going to go out there and patrol our border posts. But if we do get Dr. Masiapato back with us, he of course is the Border Management Authority Commissioner at the Home Affairs Department. We'll certainly be asking him about those two questions, the relationship with AfriForum and of course the issue of corruption.